Hey everyone! Have you ever found yourself wondering how much the exchange rate will change? Or maybe you've had enough of the wild fluctuations in currency rates that seem to pop up out of nowhere, making your head spin. Well, today we're going to break down the debate over fixed versus floating exchange rates, and trust me, we'll keep it super easy to understand. Now, you might be thinking, why should I care about exchange rates? The answer is simple. Understanding how exchange rates work impacts many areas of your life, from how much you'll spend on your next vacation, to how you plan your investments, or even how businesses around the world manage their profits. Whether you're a traveler, investor, or just someone who likes to know what's going on with their money, this topic is something you should absolutely understand. So let's get right into it. Let's start with the basics. What do we mean by fixed and floating exchange rates? A fixed exchange rate is when a country's currency value is tied to another currency, like the US dollar or a basket of currencies. This means that the value of the currency doesn't change much over time. It's pretty stable, which can be comforting in many cases, especially when dealing with international trade or long-term planning. On the other hand, a floating exchange rate is determined by the supply and demand for that currency on the open market. In other words, the value of the currency can fluctuate based on economic conditions, interest rates, political stability, and other factors that influence market demand. While this means it could be a bit more unpredictable, it also allows the currency to adjust to market conditions over time. But here's the thing. Not everyone is a fan of the wild ride that comes with floating exchange rates. That's why many people prefer a controlled float. So what exactly does that look like? Imagine if a currency's value could only change by a small amount, say around 25%. This would allow the currency to move with market forces, but not in a way that would cause sudden, massive fluctuations that could completely mess up your financial plans. A controlled float gives us a bit more certainty, which is definitely a good thing if you're planning anything from a vacation to an investment. Now let's talk about why this is such an important topic. Why should we care about exchange rates starting high or low, or how they fluctuate? Well, let's say the exchange rate is floating, and it's stable with only small changes. In such a scenario, I'd expect the rate to start from a reasonable value, maybe around $3.22 or higher. But here's the million-dollar question. Why would anyone want the rate to start at an extremely low value, say 76 cents or $1.32? It just doesn't add up, does it? Imagine waiting 15 to 20 years for the value of your currency to climb back up to where it needs to be. That's a long, painful wait with a lot of uncertainty. Instead, it would make much more sense to aim for a starting point that is closer to where we want to end up, so we can set realistic expectations right from the start. This would allow businesses, investors, and individuals to plan and budget more effectively. Starting closer to the end goal makes the journey clearer and reduces confusion about what to expect. So, what's the worst-case scenario if we take this route? In my opinion, that would be starting at a low value like $1.32. If we begin too low, it will create a lot of anxiety and uncertainty about the future. But if we start closer to the target value we're aiming for, we're creating a more predictable environment, which, let's face it, is much better for everyone involved. Let's make this more relatable for a moment. Imagine you're planning a vacation to a foreign country. If the exchange rate is stable and predictable, you can plan your budget accordingly. You'll know exactly how much to spend on food, accommodations, and activities. But if the exchange rate fluctuates wildly, you might find yourself spending a lot more than you expected, and your vacation plans could get ruined. The same concept applies to businesses, especially those that rely on imports and exports. If the exchange rate is constantly changing, it makes it harder for businesses to price their products correctly or to make long-term plans. A stable rate gives businesses the ability to budget and forecast with more accuracy, which ultimately helps them avoid financial losses and stay competitive in the market. Now let's get into the real benefit of a controlled float. It's not just about stability, it's also about confidence. When investors and businesses feel confident that the exchange rate won't fluctuate wildly, they're more likely to invest in that currency or in that country's economy. This, in turn, leads to economic growth, job creation, and a healthier market overall. On the other hand, if the currency swings all over the place, it creates fear and uncertainty, which causes investors to pull back and avoid taking risks. So how does a controlled float work in practice? Well, the government or central bank would step in every now and then to stabilize the currency if it starts going too high or too low. They can do this by adjusting interest rates, intervening in the foreign exchange market, or even selling some of the country's currency reserves. This intervention helps to prevent the market from becoming too chaotic and ensures that the currency stays within a manageable range. But of course, there are risks involved. What if the controlled float goes wrong? It's possible that external factors, like an economic crisis, a political upheaval, or an unexpected global event, could push the currency's value beyond the 25% safe range. When that happens, you need to be ready for potential volatility and risk. It's important to recognize that no system is foolproof, but having a controlled float is certainly more predictable than having a completely free-floating exchange rate. Let's talk about you for a second. How much fluctuation are you willing to tolerate? Many people prefer stability and a predictable environment, especially when it comes to their finances. But some folks are more comfortable with taking a bit of a risk, as long as there's a potential for a bigger return down the line. It varies from person to person. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Drop a comment below. Are you more in favor of stability, or do you feel comfortable with a little bit of risk? Before we wrap things up, let's zoom out and take a look at the bigger picture. What does a controlled float mean for the average person? For starters, it means your money won't lose value overnight. It gives you the ability to budget with confidence and makes planning your financial future much easier. Imagine a world where you don't have to check the currency exchange rate every single day to see if it's gone up or down. Wouldn't that be amazing? Let's also touch on a recent report from the IBBC, which has some important insights about Iraq's efforts to move away from reliance on foreign currencies like the US dollar. The process of dollarization is about reducing a country's dependence on the dollar and gaining more control over its own economy. According to the report, Iraq has made impressive strides in removing many foreign currencies from its economy, a significant step for a nation that has traditionally relied on the dollar. The big focus now is on strengthening the Iraqi dinar. This isn't just a small move, it's a powerful message about confidence in Iraq's own currency. The Iraqi government is committed to boosting the dinar, believing that this will lead to a more stable economy. How is Iraq planning to do this? The country is focusing on several key strategies, including increasing internal production. By boosting local industries, Iraq can reduce its need for imports, which will reduce its reliance on foreign currencies. This in turn strengthens the dinar and creates jobs for the local population. At the same time, the government is working on improving the banking system. A stronger banking infrastructure will make it easier for people and businesses to use the dinar with confidence. Don't forget about digital currencies. Iraq is exploring ways to integrate technology into its financial system, which could make transactions faster and more efficient. This could be a game changer for the dinar, making it more appealing for both businesses and everyday people. So what's the sentiment on the ground in Iraq? According to the report, many Iraqis are optimistic about using their own currency instead of relying on the dollar. It's a matter of national pride and economic independence. But of course, the shift won't happen overnight. People are accustomed to using the dollar, and it will take time to change those habits. The government is working on awareness campaigns to educate the public about the benefits of using the dinar. It's about more than just currency. It's about building national pride and showing Iraqis the potential value of their own currency. If the dinar strengthens, it could give everyone more purchasing power, which is an exciting prospect. Finally, what does all this mean for international trade? As Iraq transitions towards the dinar, it could change the way countries do business with each other. Other nations might start considering transactions in dinars instead of dollars, which could shake up regional economic dynamics. Other countries may take note of Iraq's progress and follow suit, which could have a huge impact on global markets.